Imagine uncovering an elegant, mineral-driven red wine you'd just never encountered before. Or maybe like a crisp, complex white from a corner of Spain that wasn't even on your radar.
Yeah.
That little spark of discovery, that's kind of the taste of Bierzo.
And that's exactly the journey we're hoping to take you on today. We're doing a deep dive into Bierzo, this emerging wine region in northwestern Spain. It's been undergoing a really quite remarkable renaissance.
Right, and we're armed with quite a stack of your sources, articles, research, notes, offering a really, comprehensive look. Think of this as our shared mission, maybe, to distill all that information into the absolute must-know insights about Bierzo.
Exactly. We'll pull out the essential nuggets, the layers of history, the incredibly unique place, what we call terroir, of course.
Yeah.
The star grapes, how they actually coax such distinctive wines from the land, the official rules that guide production, Bierzo's place on the global stage, and even what it's like to visit this pretty special corner of Spain.
So our goal is basically to give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed about Bierzo. We'll share some surprising facts and hopefully just enough context to maybe inspire you to try a bottle yourself.
Yeah.
Consider this your deep dive, guided by the material you've provided.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning then, with Bierzo's deep roots.
Okay, let's unpack this. And wow, when you look at the history, viticulture here goes way back. We're talking Roman times.
Yeah, seriously.
It's fascinating to see how the Romans, known for their engineering feats, also saw the agricultural potential of this specific land and actually planted vines.
That Roman footprint, it's still visible. It's tied to places like the ancient Roman gold mines of Las Medullas, which is a UNESCO site now. And its existence just underlines how significant the Roman presence and their activities, including agriculture, were in the region back then.
And then fast forward centuries, and the story kind of shifts to the monasteries. It seems the church played a really critical role in preserving winemaking knowledge during the Middle Ages.
They really did. They were essentially the custodians of these traditions.
And you can't overlook the impact of the Camino de Santiago either, right?
Oh, absolutely not. As pilgrims traveled through, that route basically facilitated the spread of grape varieties and definitely boosted the local wine trade. It really helped sustain viticulture through that whole era.
So a really long foundational history. But the material shows it wasn't always a smooth upward trajectory, was it? There were some significant challenges.
Oh, definitely. Like so many European regions, Bierzo was hit hard, really hard by phylloxera in the late 19th century.
That tiny louse.
Yeah, devastating for the vineyards.
And the recovery wasn't quick or easy, it seems. The sources highlight this period of stagnation afterward. The focus, sadly, shifted from quality to just producing bulk wine, often just selling grapes off to others.
Right, volume over value.
What?
And it seems geographical isolation didn't help either, making it harder to modernize and, connect with markets.
Yeah, that isolation certainly made it tough to bounce back.
But here's where the story takes a really dramatic turn. The material really emphasizes this rebirth that began, late 20th, early 21st centuries.
And what was the pivotal moment for that? What really triggered it?
Well, the key insight from the sources is pretty clear. It was the decision to focus on and truly value the native grapes, particularly Mencía.
Mencía.
Yeah, instead of just replanting with easier-to-grow international varieties, these visionary producers championed what was uniquely Bierzo's.
And those pioneers are so critical to the story, aren't they? The material points out the crucial role of these individuals who just had faith in Bierzo's potential when, the region was still largely unknown for quality.
They really set the stage for the modern era we see now.
Exactly. It was a blend of rediscovering their heritage and, I guess, the courage of these key figures that really sparked everything.
And that heritage is so deeply tied to the land itself. Bierzo's unique terroir. This is kind of the secret sauce, isn't it? The material goes into some fascinating detail here.
It truly is. Think of Bierzo's location in Leon province, right there on the border with Galicia.
Right.
It's described as this incredible transition zone, capturing influences from both the drier continental climate inland and the wetter, more moderating Atlantic climate coming in from the west.
And the geography adds another layer, too. The material talks about the Cantabrian Mountains up to the north and the Montes de Leon to the south, creating this protective valley, almost like a natural amphitheater. That geological embrace is just crucial. It shapes the microclimate, protects the vineyards, influences how much sun they get, all vital for ripening.
So you've got this continental base, hot, dry summers, cold winters, Definitely frost risk.
But that touch of Atlantic moisture and moderation is really significant. The material stresses how this specific blend allows for that slow, gradual grape ripening.
Which is fundamental for complexity, right? While keeping the acidity.
Exactly. That's fundamental for developing complexity while retaining that crucial acidity.
And the day-night temperature swings, that diurnal variation, hot days, cool nights, that must play a big role too.
It absolutely does. The material highlights how that temperature difference is key, especially for Mencía. It ensures the grapes ripen slowly and evenly, developing those really fine aromas while locking in freshness.
Okay, now, the soil story in Bierzo is particularly compelling in the sources. What makes it so special?
Well, the dominant soil types mentioned are schist, that's slate, basically, and quartz, mixed in with clay and some organic matter.
And why do these specific soils matter so much for the wine?
Okay, so this is where the material offers a really key insight. Schist is fantastic for drainage, which you need, and it also retains heat, which helps ripening. Crucially, though, it's linked to those distinct mineral notes you often find in the wines.
Like graphite or flint.
Exactly, like graphite or flint, that sort of stony character.
It's taste of the rocks.
Yeah.
And the clay component.
Well, the clay holds onto moisture, which is obviously a lifesaver during those dry summers, and it tends to add a bit more body and structure to the wines.
Right.
The material also points out that just because the soils vary within the DO, some areas with more schist, others maybe more clay, you actually get different wine styles emerging.
So more mineral, more tension from schist maybe, and more body from clay.
That's the idea. More schist often means more mineral character and tension. More clay can contribute to more body and structure. So the geology really dictates the character of the wine, in a way.
Fascinating. And altitude adds another dimension. The vineyards range pretty widely in elevation.
Yeah, that variation from about 450 up to 1,000 meters is hugely important. Higher sites mean cooler temperatures, naturally. And as the material explains, cooler temperatures mean slower ripening, higher acidity, and generally greater aromatic complexity. That's where a lot of the freshness and elegance comes from in those higher altitude wines.
Altitude, climate, soil. It really is this kind of perfect storm almost for growing distinctive grapes.
Which brings us neatly to the stars of the show, the grapes themselves. And the material is absolutely clear. Mencía is the undisputed queen of Bierzo.
Okay, tell us about the queen. What are the physical characteristics described in the sources?
Okay, so it has medium-large leaves, typically with 5 lobes, medium-large conical clusters, and medium-sized blue-black berries. Pretty distinctive looking.
And the origins of Mencía. There was some mystery around that for a while, but that's been cleared up recently, hasn't it?
Yes, thankfully. The material mentions that while there were older theories floating around, recent DNA studies confirm Mencía is actually native to the northwestern Iberian Peninsula. So right here in Bierzo and also over in Galicia.
Ah, okay.
And it's closely related to the Portuguese grape Gin, which suggests they might share a common ancestor. So it's truly a local hero grape.
And how does this local hero express herself in Bierzo's unique terroir? What's the profile like?
Well, the material highlights that this is where Mencía truly shines, really showing its distinct personality. The sensory profile is captivating. You get these vibrant, fresh red fruits. Think cherries, raspberries, maybe some strawberries.
I can almost taste them.
Right. And add to that lovely floral notes, particularly violet, and those unmistakable mineral notes we discussed, graphite, flint, whetstone.
That minerality again.
It's a signature.
Yeah.
And there's often a subtle hint of spice, too, like black pepper.
And on the palate, what's the structure like?
The material describes vibrant acidity, which is key for freshness, and tannins that are typically fine and silky, not harsh, plus an elegant ruby color. It's this combination of freshness, elegance, and minerality that really defines Bierzo Mencía.
And it's not just red wine, is it? The sources say Mencía is quite versatile.
It is, very much so. The material confirms its use for both those elegant, complex red wines, many capable of aging quite well, and also for fresh, aromatic rosés.
Oh, interesting. What are the rosés like from Mencía?
They're described as having a delicate color, really fresh red fruit aromas, those characteristic floral and mineral notes again, but with refreshing acidity and a lighter body. Very appealing, especially in warmer weather.
So Mencía is definitely the headliner. Are there other red varieties playing a supporting role?
Yes, the material briefly mentions Alicante Bouschet, which is also known as Garnacha Tintorera.
Right.
Its distinguishing feature is its colored pulp, unusual for grapes, and it's often used in blends to add deep color and a bit more structure.
Okay, so that covers the reds pretty well. What about the white varieties? Any gems there?
Absolutely. The material definitely highlights Godello as the key white grape for the region.
Godello, that name is gaining quite a reputation globally, isn't it? What's its expression like in Bierzo?
Here, the material notes that Godello often presents these lovely citrus aromas, lemon, grapefruit, along with maybe green apple, some aromatic herbs like fennel, and yes, that pronounced minerality we keep coming back to.
Minerality again. It really is a signature of Bierzo, it seems.
It really comes through in the whites, too. Godello also offers good body and really well-balanced acidity. And the material points out its aging potential. It can produce styles from crisp and mineral-driven when young to much more complex wines, sometimes with a subtle touch of oak aging.
Any other white varieties worth mentioning from the sources?
Just briefly, Doña Blanca is mentioned for making light, fresh wines usually meant for early drinking. Palomino is noted as being perhaps simpler, more for local consumption, and Malvasia can contribute floral or spiced aromas and acidity, often used in blends.
So while Mencía clearly leads the charge, there's this really compelling cast of other grapes adding depth and variety to Bierzo's whole offering.
It's a rich tapestry, for sure.
Okay, let's talk about how these grapes are actually cultivated and then turned into wine. The material provides some good insights into the viticulture and winemaking practices.
Right, so in the vineyards, you see a mix of tradition and more modern approaches. The traditional system is called gobelet, or veso. These are low, freestanding bushes, no wires.
That sounds like something from centuries ago. What's the advantage of that old system?
Well, the material notes it offers some natural protection from sun and wind. It encourages deep root growth, and it's definitely tied to older, often manual vineyard practices, and gives a real sense of authenticity.
And the more modern approach.
That's the espaldera, or trellised system, using wires. The material explains this, allows for better sun exposure for the leaves, improved aeration through the canopy, and it generally makes vineyard management, including potential mechanization, a bit easier.
One thing the material puts significant emphasis on is viñas, viejas, old vines. Why are they considered so important here?
Oh, they are absolutely crucial. Crucial for quality and for the region's identity. The material explained that these old vines naturally produce lower yields, right? But the grapes they do yield are incredibly concentrated and complex.
Ah, okay.
Plus, their deep roots make them more resilient, particularly in dry years. Preserving these ancient vines, some well over a century old, is seen as, like, guarding a vital treasure.
Lower yield, higher quality concentration that makes perfect sense. And is quality controlled in other ways in the vineyard, through pruning and things like that?
Yes, practices like careful pruning and deliberately controlling yields are key strategies mentioned in the sources. Keeping yields low, especially for the higher-end wines, really concentrates everything, the sugars, the acids, and those compounds that build structure and flavor, what we sometimes call phenolics.
Okay, good to know what phenolics refers to. The material also mentions a growing interest in sustainable and even organic practices.
That's a definite trend, yeah. It seems driven by both environmental awareness and also this desire to truly express the terroir in its purest form. The material notes challenges, of course, like the region's humidity can make organics tricky.
Right.
But it also highlights the rewards. Healthier soils, increased biodiversity, and ultimately wines that are just really pure expressions of the land.
And the harvest. Is that often done by hand, given the terrain?
Especially on the steeper slopes, yes, absolutely, where machines just can't operate. The material stresses the critical importance of timing the harvest for Mencía, which, as we said, ripens slowly. Picking at precisely the right moment is essential to get that perfect balance and avoid any sort of herbaceous, unripe notes.
So careful hands in the vineyard and really precise timing. Then what happens to those red Mencía grapes once they get into the winery?
Well, the material details the variety of fermentation vessels they use. Stainless steel is pretty common for preserving that bright fruit purity. Wood barrels or larger vats is used for adding complexity, depth, and maybe some subtle spice notes.
Okay.
And you also see concrete tanks or even egg-shaped fermenters, which allow for gradual oxygen exposure during fermentation, potentially softening tannins and building texture.
And the maceration process, the time the juice spends in contact with the skins. That's a big decision, right?
Huge. Yes, this is a key decision point. The material explains that the duration and the temperature of that skin contact significantly influence how much color, tannin, and aroma are extracted.
So that shapes the style.
Exactly. This choice really dictates the final wine style, from lighter, fruitier expressions with just a short maceration to more structured, ageable wines that have had longer contact time.
And the endiologist, the winemaker, guides all this.
Precisely. The material notes the endocrinologist's critical role in monitoring everything, steering these processes, and making those crucial decisions that ultimately shape the wine's character.
Okay, so after fermentation, the aging process begins for many of these wines,
Especially the reds, yeah.
which often means oak barrels, I assume.
That's right. The material mentions both French oak, typically associated with elegance and more subtle spice notes, and sometimes American oak, which can impart more obvious notes like vanilla or coconut, though its use might be more selective now. The size of the barrel also matters, of course. Smaller barrels mean more contact between the wine and the wood surface.
Right. What does aging actually do for the wine, fundamentally?
Well, the material explains that aging, particularly in barrel, helps to refine the wine's structure. It allows all the different elements, the fruit, the acid, the tannin, to integrate more harmoniously. And it allows for the development of more complex tertiary aromas, think leather, tobacco, earth, through that controlled, slow oxygen exposure. It basically smooths things out and adds layers of complexity.
Fascinating how many steps and decisions are involved. What about the winemaking for the white Godello? Is it different?
For Godello, yeah, the focus is often much more on preserving that primary fruit purity and the minerality we talked about.
Yeah.
So fermentation is frequently done in temperature-controlled stainless steel tanks to keep things fresh and bright.
And is there aging for Godello as well?
Yes, although maybe differently than the reds. The material notes an increasing use of neutral containers, maybe older, larger oak barrels that don't impart much flavor, or concrete tanks to add texture and complexity without overwhelming the grape's natural fruit flavor.
Okay.
And a common technique highlighted specifically for Godello is aging on its fine lees, often called surlite aging.
Ah, aging on the lees. What does that actually add to the wine?
The material explains it contributes richness, a creamier texture, and more complexity to the wine. It can sometimes bring subtle savory or yeasty notes that might remind you of fresh bread or brioche.
Interesting.
And it also confirms that Godello whites from Bierzo definitely have good aging potential because of their structure and acidity.
And the Mencía rosés, how are they typically made?
Pretty straightforward, according to the material. They're usually made using just a short period of skin contact after crushing just enough to extract that delicate color and some fresh fruit aromas while keeping the wines light, vibrant, and refreshing.
Got it. So all these vineyard and winery practices are ultimately geared towards translating the unique potential of Bierzo's grapes and that special terrain right into the bottle.
That's a goal.
Which brings us to the official framework that helps ensure quality, the Denominación de Origen, the DO Bierzo. This is the official seal of approval, effectively.
Precisely. The DO was established back in 1989, and its core mission, as outlined in the material we looked at, is really to protect the authenticity, the quality, and the typical character of Bierzo wines, and of course to help promote them nationally and internationally.
So it's a regulatory body setting the rules of the game.
Yes. The Consejo Regulador, the Regulatory Council, defines and enforces all the rules. This includes things like which grapes are permitted, maximum vineyard yields, specific practices allowed or required in both the vineyard and the winery, and also minimum aging requirements for certain classifications.
And there are rigorous quality checks involved. It's not just paperwork.
Oh, no, absolutely. The material emphasizes that wines have to pass both physical chemical analysis in a lab and blind tastings by panels of expert tasters. Only the wines that get approved receive that official DO seal, which gives the consumer confidence in what they're actually buying.
Okay, the material also runs through the traditional Spanish aging classifications that are used within the DO system. Can you give us the quick rundown on those?
Sure. You basically have Joven. These are your young, fresh wines meant to be enjoyed early. They usually see little or no oak aging, so the focus is purely on the primary fruit characteristics.
Okay.
Then Crianza. These require a minimum period of aging, including some time in oak barrels and then further time in the bottle before release. This starts to add complexity and helps smooth out the tannins.
Right.
Reserva. These have longer minimum aging periods than Crianza, resulting in deeper, more mature wines. You might start finding notes of ripe fruit alongside spice, maybe hints of leather or tobacco, and they generally have a firmer structure.
It's out to you.
Grand Reserva. This requires the longest aging period, and it's typically reserved for what are intended to be the highest quality wines from exceptional vintages. These can be very complex, showing a wide range of aromas, mature fruit, spices, earthy notes, maybe cigar box or chocolate. They're usually powerful, structured wines with long finish, definitely built for cellaring.
So that's the official structure. But the material also notes something quite interesting, that Many top producers don't necessarily use these classifications on their labels anymore.
Yes, that's a really key point that comes through. The material highlights that numerous high-quality producers, especially those who are really focused on expressing specific single vineyards or unique micro-terroirs, often choose not to use these traditional terms like Crianza or Reserva on their labels.
Why is that?
Well, it seems they might feel those broad categories don't fully capture the uniqueness of their specific site or their particular winemaking approach. So instead, they might simply indicate their own specific aging regime on the label, maybe the time spent in certain types of barrels to really put the focus on the vineyard's identity or their producer philosophy, rather than just fitting into a standard category.
So the DO provides the essential framework and protects the regional identity, but the leading producers often seem to be going beyond it to emphasize site specificity.
That certainly seems to be the trend described, a move towards prioritizing terroir expression, perhaps, over just fitting neatly into those established aging boxes.
Okay, let's talk about the end result then. When you actually open a bottle of Bierzo wine, what should you expect to taste? The material gave us those sensory profiles earlier.
Yeah, let's recap the typical notes you might find. For a good Mencía red, expect that vibrant red fruit character, maybe moving towards darker cherry as it ages or in richer styles. Those signature floral violet notes are common. Definitely that distinct minerality graphite whetstone, perhaps a hint of spice like black pepper. And importantly, lively acidity and those fine, often silky tannins.
Sounds incredibly versatile for food pairing. What kind of pairings does the material suggest for Mencía?
Yeah, Mencía reds are noted for being really versatile. The material suggests them with things like grilled red meats, game birds or venison, and pasta dishes with richer sauces. The wine's acidity and structure are apparently great at cutting through richness and complementing savory flavors.
And any specific regional pairings mentioned?
Yes, the material specifically mentions Botilla del Bierzo, which is a traditional smoked and cured pork sausage from the region as a classic pairing, along with other local pork dishes in game. And aged reds can also pair nicely with medium-aged cheeses, apparently.
Okay. How about the Godello whites? What do they pair well with?
Godello is highlighted as being excellent with seafood of all kinds, white fish, fresh cheeses, and generally Mediterranean cuisine. Dishes featuring vegetables, olive oil, maybe lighter proteins like chicken or fish. Its acidity and minerality make it a great match.
Good to know. Now, beyond the wines themselves, the material introduces us to some of the key figures, the real icons who drove this Bierzo rebirth.
Yeah, these are the pioneers who really believed in Bierzo when maybe it wasn't so fashionable. Names like Descendientes de G. Palacios, with Ricardo Pérez Palacios noted as a key figure for making these incredibly expressive Mencía wines.
Heard of him?
Yeah, and Raul Perez is mentioned. He's globally recognized now, known for a more minimalist approach, really focused on pure terroir expression. Dominio de Torres is highlighted for its dedication to quality Mencía and expressing the region. And Castro Ventosa, which is a historic family property, really focusing on those precious old vines.
It's pretty inspiring, isn't it, to see how a few dedicated people can really change a whole region's destiny. The material also lists others like Aquilar, Piticum, and Valtui, who are contributing to the region's diversity and strength now.
It really seems like it was a collective effort, definitely spearheaded by these early visionaries.
And the material discusses the market trends. It sounds like Bierzo is really on the rise globally.
That's definitely the picture painted in the sources, yeah. The demand is apparently growing for authentic, high-quality wines that also offer good value for money, and Bierzo seems to fit that description perfectly for many people. The region is gaining significant international attention from critics and consumers alike.
And I saw the material make a comparison. I sometimes hear Mencía and Pinot Noir. Is that a fair comparison?
Well, the material does mention that Mencía is increasingly being compared to Pinot Noir, particularly for its elegance, its potential for complexity, and its ability to really transmit the nuances of its terroir. It's definitely a sign of the high esteem it's now held in on the international stage, whether the comparison is perfect or not.
Interesting. So great wines, gaining recognition, wonderful with food. It really sounds like a place people would actually want to visit. Does the material cover wine tourism, eno-tourism?
It does, yeah. It frames Bierzo as a really compelling destination that seamlessly blends stunning nature, deep history, and obviously wine experiences.
What kind of natural beauty are we talking about?
The material highlights the beautiful landscapes, the vineyards clinging to the slopes, the vibrant seasonal colors from spring flowers to the reds and golds of autumn leaves. It suggests great opportunities for hiking or biking right through the heart of wine country.
And the historical sites. You
Yeah.
mentioned Las Medulas.
Yeah, beyond Las Medulas, there's the Monastery of Caracedello, the really impressive Templar castle in Ponferrada, and the town of Villafranca del Bierzo, which is a significant stop on the Camino de Santiago, just full of history and charm.
So you can really immerse yourself in history and nature, all while exploring the wine scene.
Exactly. The material describes visiting the wineries, they call them bodegas. They're walking through the vineyards to see those old Mencía and Godello vines up close, and experiencing tastings that are often led by the winemakers or owners themselves, sharing their passion and knowledge firsthand.
That sounds great. And the food and culture aspect.
There's a strong emphasis mentioned on enjoying the traditional cuisine, like that botillo dish we talked about, perfectly paired with the local wines, of course. Plus, experiencing local festivals and markets adds another layer to the cultural immersion.
And this tourism has a positive local impact.
Yes, the material touches on that, how enotourism supports the local economy, creates jobs, aids rural development, and importantly, helps preserve both the cultural and the natural heritage of the region. It's a positive cycle.
It truly sounds like a region that's been revitalized. Now, looking ahead, the material also discusses challenges, but also future prospects. What are the main hurdles Bierzo faces?
Well, climate change is highlighted as a major challenge, unfortunately. Rising temperatures are a definite concern for maintaining Mencia's characteristic acidity, which is so important. Irregular rainfall patterns and the increased risk of extreme weather events like hail or heat waves also pose significant risks.
So adaptation is going to be absolutely key for them.
It seems so, yes. The material notes the need for strategies like smarter water management in the vineyards, maybe exploring ways to provide shade for the vines, and potentially even researching and adapting to more heat-resistant Mencia clones or rootstocks for the future.
And in the global market, is competition still a challenge?
Oh, always. The material acknowledges the highly competitive nature of the international wine market. Bierzo needs to continue clearly communicating its unique identity, its history, its authenticity, its growing focus on sustainability, and that incredible quality-to-price ratio through really effective marketing and PR to stand out from the crowd.
So the goal is continued, or even greater, international visibility. How might the region achieve that, according to the sources?
Some strategies mentioned include actively promoting the Dio Bierzo brand on the world stage, holding high-level tastings for trade and press, participating in major international wine competitions, and working closely with influential critics and journalists to get the word out.
Add innovation and research. Is that part of the future plan, too?
Very much so. The material emphasizes its importance, things like ongoing research into adapting Mencia for a changing climate, perhaps utilizing precision viticulture techniques, and continuing to advance winemaking practices. It also reiterates the value of preserving those old vines, seeing them as genetic treasures, and continuing to explore the potential of the region's many specific microterroirs.
So despite the challenges, the outlook seems positive.
Ultimately, yes, the material paints a really promising picture for Mencia's future as a key Spanish grape on the world stage.
And Bierzo's place in that future.
It's clearly positioned as the heartland of Mencia and potentially as a model for how a region can successfully combine tradition, a commitment to quality, and sustainable innovation. It's a region with a remarkable past, and it seems a very bright future ahead.
So there you have it, our deep dive into Bierzo, based on the material you provided us with. We've journeyed from Roman origins and monastic influence through the devastation of phylloxera all the way to this glorious rebirth we see today. We've explored that unique amphitheater terroir with its schist soils and that special climate blend. We've met the Queen Mencía and the emerging star Godello.
Yeah.
We've peeked into the vineyards and wineries where tradition meets innovation, understood the Dio's role and its nuances, tasted the wines in our minds, and imagined the food pairings.
Hopefully.
Celebrated the pioneers who made it happen, seen the growing global recognition, pictured a visit to this stunning region, and looked ahead at both the challenges and the very promising path forward.
And this deep dive really was all about synthesizing those key insights from your sources, trying to give you that shortcut to understanding this truly special corner of the wine world.
Of course, the best way to truly grasp it, though, is to experience it firsthand. We really would encourage you, if you can, to seek out a bottle of Bierzo Mencía or perhaps a Godello and just taste the authenticity and elegance for yourself.
Definitely. And as you explore, maybe here's a thought to take away with you, something that emerged pretty strongly from this deep dive for me. Given Bierzo's dramatic comeback, which was really fueled by embracing its ancient grapes and its unique place, well, it makes you wonder, how many other hidden wine treasures might be out there, just waiting for their own moment of rediscovery?
That's a great question. Or perhaps another angle. Considering the pressures that climate change is putting on so many traditional wine regions, could Bierzo's specific terroir and its native grapes, like Mencía, actually offer unexpected lessons? Or maybe even hold keys for adaptation, helping to define the taste of wine in our changing future?
Interesting thought. Whichever question sparks your curiosity more, we hope this deep dive has given you plenty to reflect on and perhaps explore further.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into Bierzo.